So Jan Veselak, what is your occupation?
I'm a licensed psychotherapist, in particular licensed addiction counselor. I specialize in working with people who have chemical dependency issues as well as sexual addiction issues, because I'm also a certified sex addiction therapist candidate.
So is that your specialty?
Yes, chemical dependency or any form of addictive behaviors, and that includes obsessions, anxiety, trauma, and attachment disorders.
Okay, so you have an experience with working with people who are dealing with porn addiction.
Yes, I do.
So what is porn addiction?
Well, porn addiction is like any other addictive behavior, except that the addiction, as it were, is to looking at pornography. Now you may say, well, how can pornography be an addiction? Because some people don't believe it can be. They only believe that it has to be a chemical. But any mood-altering event, chemical, and I also add person, can be addictive. Because I define addiction as a pathological relationship with any mood-altering chemical, process, person that has life-threatening consequences.
Can porn addiction affect sex life for young men?
Okay. Well, when you're dealing with an addictive behavior of any kind, we talk about two types. There's chemical, that would be alcohol, drugs, or process. A process addiction is different in that you have to keep working to get the high, such as in pornography, you have to keep looking at pornography. In sexual addiction in general, the fantasy keeps the high going. If a man's looking for a prostitute, for instance, chances are they will cruise or drive around the city for hours fantasizing which girl they want to pick up. The actual sex act will probably take about 3 or 4 minutes at most, but the whole process takes several hours. And that's where the addiction lies. Gambling, it's in gambling. But whether or not it's chemical or process, the same brain chemistry, usually in the pleasure center, in the center of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, is involved. And the neurotransmitter involved in addictive behaviors is dopamine, which is the chemical that says, I like this, give me more. See, it's not just, I love it, this is fun, great. It's like, also give me more of this. And as they give me more, is where the addictive behaviors begin to take place.
Okay, so in their love lives, what will it affect them in any ways with being with a spouse? Or
Yes, because the problem with porn addiction is that, especially with high-speed internet, the process is, okay, you look at a porn, look at a naked girl. Well, who doesn't like looking at naked girls, right? Or naked guys, because there's homosexuals, but also women get involved in pornography. Their use is a little different usually, but generally, you get excited. You like looking at the pictures. In and of itself, that's not addiction. That is just looking at naked people or people having sex acts or whatever. But what happens is the mood that takes place, the mood shift that takes place once you start doing this, feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And so people want more of it. And if you have an issue such as reward deficiency syndrome, and we talk about that with alcoholism a lot, it also exists with process addictions. So what that means is that people can't experience pleasure or other things in life like normal people. It's deficient. All of a sudden, this, as we say in English, floats your boat. You feel excited. Wow, I feel normal. This is exciting. So let me look at more. And the computer now, especially since it's fast, can start shifting pictures. And these pictures then, because they're so fast, we develop a desire for novelty, seeing the new one. And so we get into a process where, oh, I like this one. Oh, what's the next one going to be? Will the next one be better? and we keep flipping through, as it were, the scenes or whatever. Or we get bored, just say we start out looking at girls. I see naked girls, that looks pretty. And let's say I like blonde, blue-eyed girls at first. So I want to see blonde, blue-eyed girls look like. Then you want to say, well, what does a brunette look like? What does a redhead look like? Then what do black girls look like? Then what do dwarfs look like? Or whatever. And then you can get into it, and then you'll hear people say, oh man, there's this really sick, perverted thing on computer. Well, now that gets your interest, because for another reason, curiosity. And that curiosity then can lead to a pattern of seeking more curiosities. And so so I call, when I talk to my clients, I call them pixel girls, because they're made of pixels. And so you see a pixel girl here. It's easier to relate to a pixel girl because she's the image versus somebody who's real, because real people, can be difficult to deal with or whatever. One, and two, they're idealized. How can I say this? The problem is with relating to real people is that these girls become fantasy, and the fantasy girl is always better in a certain way to a real person. And so many times, if people develop a pornography addiction, and you'll know this by how long you spend looking at porn. You look at porn, I see a couple of pictures, that's great, and move on. That's not an addictive behavior. But if you start spending hours, and the thing about the computer in general, it puts us into a hypnotic trance. Mm-hmm. So time distortion is the major symptom of trance state. So you're thinking, I've been on 5 minutes, and you find you've been on 5 hours. That's an indication you're spending a lot of time. Money will be an issue. Am I buying porn sites? I really don't have to because it's free. Or three, you're spending a lot of money getting viruses off of your internet or your computer because what you're doing is now looking at sites and it gets jam-packed full of viruses. That's going to cost you money. Mm-hmm. So it begins to affect your quality of life. Also, you can't really separate pornography usually from masturbation. And so these are masturbatory ways of experiencing things. And so what happens is you can keep a man, a woman too, can keep themselves stimulated for hours. They may not reach climax. And in fact, what begins to happen with a lot of guys is they start looking for the perfect picture to climax to. But you never really find it. Will the next one be better? Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Oh, it's not as good. But the next one will be. And they keep going. And so you can do that for hours. And so they're looking for the perfect scene, girl, or guy, whatever they're doing to climax to. Once they climax, there's a release of oxytocin. Oxytocin is the connection chemical. That's what makes you love your children rather than killing them at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're infants. It's because the oxytocin builds a bond. You build bonds to pixel girls. So now a guy has a girlfriend. And a lot of women have complained about this. Because the guys are usually in denial. Everything's fine, I don't have a problem. The girl's like, yeah, my boyfriend won't make love to me because he's staying up all night looking at porn, and I'm in bed here, and I'm the real thing. And this begins to take place. That's a complaint. And so what will happen is guys begin to prefer pixel girls to the real thing. I first learned about this from a client who was talking in group. He says, my girlfriend's mad at me. Well, why is she mad at you? Well, we were having sex, and I was looking at pornography on my phone while we were having sex. I didn't know what to say, so I said, dude, really? It's just something I wasn't used to. But then I've learned to study this. I explains why. Because the addiction is to the porn. It's to the act of looking at porn.
So that's what they're doing. They're trying to have arousal with the porn? instead of the intimate relationship.
Right.
Mm.
And that's what they form it with. And so as they masturbate to it, that becomes much more of the reality for them. You know, it's not absolute, but you'll begin to see the shift. And spending long time on the computer, spending money you really don't need to spend on, either buying sites or fixing your computer because you got viruses, you know, spending a lot of time preparing for the porn or dealing with the after effects, because just like alcohol, you get a hangover because you're depleting yourself of your dopamine, other neurotransmitters, which also means you're depleting yourself of vitamin B's and everything else, and so you can feel hungover. An example, I had a client very early in my life who spent hours doing crossword puzzles. He felt hungover after doing intense binging of crossword puzzles.
Okay. So, how can you treat porn addiction?
You treat porn addiction the same way you treat any other addictive behavior. The first thing I do, well, in any addictive behavior, the first thing you do is you want to get the person stable, stability, get them detoxed. And there is a period of detox time with porn addiction, or like anything else. So we, of course, use amino acids. For somebody who has porn addiction, tyrosine will be important because they depleted themselves of their dopamine. You know, plus the vitamin B's and all the other chemicals that we use, supplements that we use for treatment of that. Then I like having people on a social level go to 12-step meetings, because we look at addiction, or recovery, I should say, as a three-legged stool. So you have a seat and you have three legs. One of the legs is biochemical, you know, the physiology, and we treat that through amino acids, also teaching people about proper diet, about low blood sugar, high blood sugar ratios. We teach them that. There's also then the psychological component. That's where I generally work with. And then there's the social component, social/spiritual. And so I like people going to 12-step meetings. There's several types of sex addiction therapy groups. There's SA, Sex Alcoholics Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous. The first one is much more religious oriented and much stricter. They don't, you have to be married to have sex in their view, and they don't really want homosexuals. SAA allows people with more modern sexual mores, and allows gay, transgendered, other people to belong. They're not going to be that exclusive. Then there's Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, because people can be have love addiction, you know, which is a little off the topic, but it's related. So there's quite a few groups, but they're all 12-step based, like Alcoholics Anonymous. That builds a social bond, because addiction in general, I believe, is an attachment disorder. The problem is of intimacy. Intimacy scares us as people a lot of times, and many times pornography is the kind of the social medium. There are porn sites. I had a client. The porn site is a woman. She's naked, and she's talking to the camera and talking about how great you are. Oh man, you're so great. And she fakes orgasm, and so the guy gets to hear how fantastic he is as he masturbates. Clearly that would be an attachment disorder, because you need to be told how fantastic you are by a pixel girl, because you're not going to be told that by somebody real. So that is an intimacy issue, and so we talk about the intimacy problems. A lot of times there's been abuse, and not always child abuse, sexual abuse, or abuse from family, school, other forms of life create trauma and help break relationships.
Interesting.
And once there's a break in relationship, people feel profound shame. Shame makes us want to hide. We hate ourselves. We give negative self-talk. And so healing shame is part of the process. And that's where I work in particular. The 12-step meetings help with shame because you find people who understand you. You can say, and man, I looked at this type of website. Oh, okay, so did I. And they find themselves that they're not judged because they did something. Because you're not going to go to the street and say, hi, I'm at the bus stop. Hi, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm not doing too great. I was looking at I was looking at bestiality last night, and I just don't know, or I'm a heroin addict. Yeah, I've been craving heroin. Most people will want to move aside from you, but at 12-step meeting, you can tell people this, and they understand.
Yeah.
And so that's important.
Okay. We have probably somebody who is watching and is thinking, could it be that I have porn addiction? How do you know if you have porn addiction?
Well, first of all, I don't worry if it's about the word addiction. Sometimes that scares people. I may have a problem, but I'm not an addict. That's okay. If you think it's a problem, it's a problem. Number one. Number two, signs and symptoms of porn addiction are one, the amount of time you spend looking at porn. If you look at it 5 minutes a day, it's probably not an addiction, although it's kind of maintenance use if it's daily. But you begin to increase more and more time to looking at it. You lose time. So I say, I looked at it for a half hour, and now I'm late for work because I was looking at it for 3 hours. That would be a problem. Is it encroaching on your life? Does it encroach on your personal relationships? So you have this very beautiful girlfriend, and you're looking at porn, and she's ready, willing, and able, and you want to look at porn. That would be a problem. Also, with addiction, say alcohol, you increase alcohol use. You can also increase the type of alcohol. So you only drink beer and wine at first, now you're drinking vodka, the harder stuff. With porn addiction, you start looking at more and more things that you would never believe you would ever look at. And so you're saying, because the addiction is to the act of looking at the pictures. That is why many people get arrested for looking at child pornography. They themselves would never touch a child and have no interest in sex with a child. They're interested in looking at the pictures, but it's still illegal. And if you're caught downloading this stuff, because the FBI in America does search this stuff on their computers, who's doing this. And so people will go to jail, become registered sex offenders, but would never actually harm a child. Now the problem is, pedophiles will also look at child pornography. So there really needs to be a way of discerning that. And so you can start doing illegal things. And if you go into the realm of illegal pornography, and you're not that type of person normally, you know you have a severe problem. Because now you're taking life-threatening risks. It's called use despite negative consequences. So if you're getting fired, you're getting yelled at, losing relationships, and you find yourself still wanting to look, even more especially, that is the major sign of an addiction.
So I've been hearing about young men here in Iceland, maybe 10 years old, who are watching porn.
That's right.
So what effect can that have on their relationship?
Oh, very profound one. First of all, their brains are still developing. Men's brains in particular still develop until like 25. That's one of the reasons why younger men are more immature than girls, usually. One, at that delicate age, they're learning to explore sexuality, what it looks like, and now they're getting weird ideas about what sex can be. If you misspell a word, even as a kid, you can get porn sites, but ones that are kind of really weird. It's like, oh my God, do people actually do this? And so you learn very sexual ways of behaving that even normal adults who like to experiment wouldn't do. Well, so you get a weird sense of what girls are like. A lot of times people like to look at rape videos. And so they think that the girls want to be raped because all these girls are having orgasms as being raped. Well, they're actresses, of course. Also, what can happen, as I said, you begin to prefer pixel girls to reality. They're easy to relate to. And what a phenomenon that's beginning to happen with men from the age of 20 to 40 is the development of erectile dysfunction due to pornography. In other words, they're with the girl and they can't get it up because she's not my perfect ideal girl. And that's the only way I can get excited is by looking at a girl on the screen rather than somebody who's alive and in color, is what we say. And in fact, I just recently had a client who had that problem. He couldn't do it, and he had a girl ready to have sex with him in the college dorm, and couldn't do it. So he went away. She walked away, and but he could look at the pornography and masturbate, and come to climax. And this is an increasing issue in the world. The numbers, I don't know the statistics anymore. There is a website that's a 50-minute website explanation of erectile dysfunction in men at an early age, and it goes into the brain chemistry too. Mm-hmm. So it's a very good video, so you can get more education on how that works. It's a brain chemical thing. Yes.
Okay. Jan Veselak, thank you.